but you left the bodies, didn't you?
Do you like scary movies, Sydney?
You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. Don't need a TV.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
Over 1,600 titles, each for rent at just $2 the first night, and only...
Oh, you're so cool, Brewster!
Welcome to the Frog Brothers podcast with your hosts, Justin and Alec.
This is an emergency alert for the citizens of this county. Trick-or-treating and all other public Halloween activities have been suspended until further notice. Please take shelter in a room with no television sets or broadcasting equipment. Please keep phone lines clear. If an emergency occurs, you know who to call.
Hello, and welcome to a special edition episode of the Frog Brothers Podcast. I am your host, Justin, with my brother and co-host, Alec. And tonight we have the Yurcaba brothers, John and Jeremy.
Wait! I've always wanted to do.
Hello, John.
Hello, John.
Hello, John.
Thanks for joining us, fellas. How are you guys tonight?
Doing pretty good.
Not too shabby.
Happy Back to the Future Day, by the way, gentlemen.
Oh, hell yeah.
To you as well.
What do we become, assholes or something?
Yeah.
I hope not.
So that's in reference to, like, I want to say in 2009, I made like a Facebook event for October 21st, 2015, and invited all the Back to the Future fans to it, and it was just called, so what, do we become assholes or something?
Nice.
And it was amazing because for 6 years I sat there and looked at that invite, that calendar invite as like an upcoming invite since I'd accepted. So like when it finally happened, you're like, oh, I'm kind of disappointed. That's not there to look at anymore.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
So you guys have collaborated on a project called Ectober, and there's been a lot of buzz about it, but we wanted to talk to you a little bit more in depth than just everyone looking at the Instagram art and videos you guys have done. So kind of jump into it real quick, and if you guys just want to give us a general rundown of like how the project came to fruition and how you guys decided to collaborate on this project in particular.
Yeah, for sure. You want to go first, dude?
Yeah, no, there's something that you need to know about John and I, and it's kind of like when you get your friends together at the bar and you have a great idea that you guys should open a bar, except we are actually dumb enough to try and achieve it.
Yep.
I think that's brave. That's bravery. I like it.
I think every man in some time in his life says that, though. I'm going to open a bar.
Exactly.
Let's open a bar.
Yeah. No, that's
a good idea.
That's super accurate. Our life as brothers has been filled with us sitting around and being like, hey, what if we did this? And then just saying, I mean, why not? Let's see if we can do it. And this is just the latest in a long line of probably what will continue to be us just acting on our ideas and pushing them as far as we can go. Obviously we're both big Ghostbusters fans. We grew up with the movies and the TV shows and the toys and the games and everything. And so this is just, Halloween was always a big event in our house. So that is also a big part of it too. Like, our parents were really big into decorating and carving pumpkins and just making that like a really special time of year. Our mom is a huge horror movie fan. Our dad loved trying to find the creepiest costumes that he could for himself. So there's always, now that we're both out and living on our own, there's always that want to like hang on to that magic and everything. And so that plus our love of Ghostbusters, I think every year my mind just goes back to like, oh, how can I do something Ghostbusters related to celebrate Halloween? And for the last few years, I've been doing a lot of, usually in October, there's a bunch of different fun social media art challenges that the artists do. And I thought it would be cool to do something different and do something that was specifically Ghostbusters related and call it Ectober. And it would, I've drawn stuff that's a little more film related. I've kind of made up my own versions of Ghostbusters in the past. And this year I wanted to, between the real Ghostbusters retro Kenner figures coming out and just rewatching some of the real Ghostbusters Halloween episodes, I thought it'd be cool to do something that was anchored in the world of the real Ghostbusters. And it just seemed like a really cool idea and fun idea to have them face off against monsters and ghosts from movies, like actual real movies, especially because there's that fun juxtaposition of like kind of the cartoonier version of Ghostbusters having to face off against some genuinely like heinous and murderous creatures from actual cinema, and seeing them just have a chance to show like, oh, we got this, we're the real Ghostbusters. And so yeah, it just came from this idea of like, man, it'd be cool to see Ghostbusters fight movie monsters and movie ghosts. And I knew I wanted it to be more than just drawings, just me, saying, hey, I drew another thing. Hey, I drew another thing. Check it out. And so I went to Jeremy, because anytime I have a crazy idea, my first instinct is to be like, hey, Jeremy, guess what I just thought of? And I knew by doing that he was going to have some cool stuff to add. And it's been a lot of fun so far, especially with the editing and the video stuff that he's been able to do and the music. And I feel like it's just elevated the whole thing and made it really fun.
That's excellent. The thing I love the most about this project, right, is any kid that grew up watching horror movies and watching the real Ghostbusters when it was on always imagined that version of the Ghostbusters taking on a lot of these characters, right? It's a natural thing you do, and it's a great way to like combine those worlds. So to see that the project has actually come to light and to see how it all works together, it's been pretty incredible. So, but I would like to talk about, so your background, John. Obviously, you longtime Ghostbusters fan, big part of the community. That's how we know you. Shout out to the Yes Have Some crew for bringing you on board and making you well known across the groups. And I think one of the highlights. I got to meet you at Ghostbusters Fan Fest, which was incredible to see all your art out there, and just having your art on the passes, having it included with the package, and my mind was blown when I walked into Fan Fest and saw your art up for the poster size kind of layout map of the land, and it was like, oh wow, like I know the guy that did that art, like that's pretty awesome, like
And I just want to say that. That was my first time really being introduced to some of your work and stuff, was meeting you there and Justin telling me about it a lot. And that's when I was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to get a drawing from this guy then too. And then we just, we're kind of chatting and stuff. And you never know how much of a fan someone is of the property that they're working on. But it was very clear to me how much of a fan you were, because you were within 5 seconds of finishing the drawing, someone had come to let you know that one of the panels was about to start. And I saw you take off on foot like Quicksilver to run and catch the panel. And I was like, yep, this is in good hands.
Oh, man. Yeah, that day, that whole weekend was such a blur. I mean, it was funny because literally, they had contacted me. Actually, I reached out to them, and as soon as we started, because they had announced it like a year before on Ghostbusters Day, like, hey, we're going to do this fan fest thing. It's going to be a lot of fun. We look forward to telling you more. As soon as they started really telling us more about, like, okay, here's what is going to happen, where it's going to be, what we're trying to do with it, I reached out and just, tracked down whoever I needed to talk to and was like, hey, I would love to be a part of it. I could do some artwork for you guys. Because I knew, like, I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to contribute, not even just as like a, hey, look at me, but like I wanted to draw Ghostbusters more, and it was really cool. It was a great time working with them, literally up until the day that I left, because I got to LA a few days before it started, just to make sure I had my hotel room, had everything set up, run to the art store and get some supplies I needed, and I lived in LA for a while, so it was nice to be back in that part of town. But literally up until the morning that I left, I was still like sending them new files and being like, okay, here's the most updated one. Here's all the other things. Here's this. After you read this, I will not be in my apartment anymore. I will have the files on me if I need to resend them, but I cannot alter them anymore. And it was like, I had to tell myself, like, you have to leave now. And, to the point where like my wife and I had done the research to try and see where the best place to get prints done was. And there was a shop down the street from where we lived in Phoenix. And she was like, you go, I'll stay here and get the prints made. And then she drove up like a day or two later. And so it was super hectic, but it was so much fun. And I'm just like you guys, like I knew that I had contributed stuff to them. And I knew that there was going to be a map. I figured it was just going to be in the program. And I knew that there was going to be like some patches and that kind of stuff that would probably end up in a swag bag. Like I knew all the swag type stuff, like the bag, the bottle opener, the patches. I was aware of that. But to walk in, first of all, like I think it was Craig from Yes Have Some. He was one of the first people to get to the breakfast that they had that morning. And they handed out badges there. And I was like picking up my bags and getting ready to leave my hotel room. And I got a text from him. He's like, where are you? Look at this. And he showed me the Class 10 badge. And I was like, they didn't, like, I had no idea they were going to use it for the badges. I figured it would just be like a thing with the logo on it. And then to see like each different class had a piece of my artwork on it, I was just like, stop it. Like anyone who goes is going to look at because like you go to conventions, you keep the badges if they're nice, and they're just like a reminder of like, oh yeah, I went to that. Anyone who went to FanFest is going to be able to look at their badge that I drew and be like, oh yeah, FanFest, that was a good time. Absolutely. And so that was mind blowing. And then I got there and got my like I was kind of in a rush because I wanted to go to the breakfast, but I also had to leave the breakfast early so I could get to Sony and get my table all set up and everything before everybody else left the breakfast and started showing up. And so to get there and be like, okay, here's what I got to do. I got to go here. I got to check in. I got to park. I got to get my thing. And then like, as my brain is going a million miles an hour, I just walk in and I stop and like time stands still and I'm just looking up and it's like on one, like you look to the right and there's the big like Sony Picture Studios, like, the big entrance sign and everything. And then you look to the other way and here's like my map of Sony and FanFest blown up to like gigantic size. And then above that is a giant banner that I drew with Stay Puft and Slimer and the Terror Dog that's like, welcome to Ghostbusters Fan Fest. And I'm just like, oh, what is, huh? Hang on a second. I gotta, hold on. And that was definitely a moment. I definitely got a little choked up, got a little teary-eyed. I'm pretty sure someone came up behind me and like patted my back, was like, you doing okay, man? I was like, I just need a minute. Hang on.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry.
Yeah. Come on, don't do this. But no, it was an incredible time, and it was a lot of fun, and it was I will definitely never forget it.
Oh, for sure. That's incredible. So fun story about that too. So I got everything I think I had class 5, so I got plenty of artwork included in that of yours, and then, I had you draw a boogeyman for me, and then I picked up one of your prints of the Ecto 2, and, I've got some stuff in my new place. I moved at the beginning of August, and I have some prints and stuff that I hadn't hung up yet, and, both my boys are really big into Ghostbusters now, and my 5-year-old saw it, and he's like, hey, can I put this in my room? And he saw the print of the Ecto 2, because I just found an Ecto 2 at a secondhand store, and so
awesome.
I gave that to the boys to play with their retro release real Ghostbusters figures. So like he was so happy to have that and be able to put the Ecto 2 by the print that he's got on his wall now. So it's like every time I walk by,
cool.
it's like so awesome to see like that next generation of fans, and just to show them the different versions of the artwork out there. So definitely, I think a lot of people appreciate your work, and it's cherished in this household, I'll tell you that. I've got several of the prints up in the walls.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's as much fun as it is to be a fan and to draw and kind of like draw what I see in my head and put my love for the franchise into it and all that kind of stuff. It's it means even more for people to reach out to me and want my artwork or want me to draw something for them, and come up to me at conventions and stuff and tell me that this is their favorite version, like the way I drew this version of Ghostbusters is their favorite depiction of it, or how they have something else of mine and it's on a wall or something, and that to me makes it all worth it, because at the end of the day, like, this franchise, every version of it has meant a lot to me, and so to feel like I'm in some way contributing to other people enjoying it and being attached to it, that means a lot for sure.
Yeah, you're definitely part of the permanent Ghostbusters history now with all the art you've done. So you're technically canon.
If you go on the actual Ghostbusters wiki, I have a page on it, and I just realized that the other day, and that kind of blew my mind, because I did color flatting, like assistant coloring basically, on the Crossing Over miniseries that IDW did, and it's funny because like you go in there into the wiki page and it says like who I am, what I did, and then there's like all this stuff about like, on this day John posted about being involved with the comic. On this day he posted a picture of himself buying the comics, and I'm just like, whoa.
That's amazing. Like you're officially part of the long-term history now, so that's excellent. So Jeremy, let's get into a little bit about what you did with the project here, right? So if you haven't checked out the Ectober stuff yet, right, this starts with the static image, and you guys are saying, swipe for a cool little animation in quotations, because it's not a full animation, but it really brings it to life between the music that you did and the voiceover work and the dialogue you added from some of the villains from the movies and stuff, and even some of the heroes and stuff, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your process and inspiration for your take on the Ectober theme you did?
Yeah, definitely. When we started talking about how to do this, it was, at least to me, it was going to be something kind of completely different, because we had like a whole trailer for it and everything like done, and then we threw that all away and said, all right, we need to do something different. We're having way more ideas than we can keep track of, and I didn't really get the theme song done until right before the first post because I kept going in and changing things, but I definitely wanted to keep the spirit of the old theme song alive, but I wanted to like make it huge and epic, and like when it dropped, I wanted you to feel like you were in the action, like you were in the driver's seat of the Ecto one, like peeling around corners, and then adding like the little voice lines and everything. I just wanted it to feel like Ghostbusters, like, and I think without getting those classic voice grabs and like Slimer doing the like all that stuff, I think that it probably just would have been any other song. But putting all those elements in there, I definitely think that like you can tell. And then like when the proton wand, like the proton pack turns on, I think that's like my personal favorite part of the song. So
I mean, if it was up to me, Sony would be paying the two of you to do a new Real Ghostbusters cartoon, and then I would be honestly, all up in your DMs about a writing job. So.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things I said to you. I was like, if this isn't like a surefire proof of concept, then I don't know what else we could do.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, obviously we're not like trying to be super crazy or say that we're not saying that we're doing anything that we're not doing. This is literally just us like being fans and doing cool stuff. But
yeah, it's fun.
We're 100% coming at it with like that passion of like, hey, if we were going to be any part of like bringing back the Real Ghostbusters or any Ghostbusters animated live action, like whatever, like this is like, we have ideas, we have visions, and we love Ghostbusters. So like that's the same energy that we're bringing to this. And I mean, I think I speak for both of us. We would love to be a part of official Ghostbusters anything, like Ghost Corps. Let's sit down. We have so many ideas.
Yeah, we'll bring you to the table with them. No, you guys have probably know Eric a little better than we do, but I think the thing, Jeremy, that I really love about your take on that theme song is I've heard so many covers of the Ghostbusters song over the years, right? It's just a great song to cover. And once in a while you come across one that's got some magic into it that you can really feel is the difference between a fan and someone that's just kind of doing it because they want to do a fun cover of a Halloween song.
Yeah.
Right? And you can kind of feel that with the emotion in it, like the way you perform the guitar tracks, the way you kind of mixed everything in there. You definitely get those vibes that, you know, there's a lot of ways to kind of do the heavier rock version of the Ghostbusters theme, and your way is just kind of its own thing. It doesn't bleed into a specific genre. You're not like, oh, that's clearly like a new metal take on it, you know?
Right.
Like, one of my favorite versions is the Attaboy Skip version, which is like the 90s, like, third wave ska cover of it. And I'm just like, that's because I'm an old dude that loves, like, some ska. So, like, I love that. And I can tell that those guys enjoy that song, too. And I get those vibes from hearing your version of it, so.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I think John and I have had this endless conversation about a genre of music that hasn't happened yet, that is lo-fi hip-hop beats to spook and haunt to, which is basically just like creepy lo-fi beats. And that was the whole inspiration for the first half, and I was like, but I wanted to be dramatic and lo-fi so stripped down, and I was like, let's just throw some like heavy drops in the end. So it was really a mix-up of two genres, and one of them doesn't even really exist. So
yeah.
Well, it does exist. You just haven't dropped the album yet, right? So
yeah,
there we go. Sure. Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. This is a new genre of music.
Groundbreaking.
It is groundbreaking.
Hey kids, Alec here with the Frog Brothers Podcast, reminding you to check out our YouTube where we have exclusive mail-time videos featuring collectibles, toys, comics, VHS, rare DVDs, shirts, pins, and more. Be sure to hit subscribe. Hit us up on Facebook and Instagram to see live unboxing videos and daily updates. You can find all of our podcast episodes up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and most places where podcasts are available. Keep an eye out for merchandise in the future. And remember, second shelf is mine. That's where I keep my root beers and double thick Oreo cookies. Nobody touches the second shelf but me.
Cry, little sister. Come to your brother. Yeah.
So you've got quite the lineup of images released so far with some amazing ghosts on here. And I know like the final is going to be like a big reveal, so we're not going to get to that because the joy of that surprise is going to be, I'm assuming, on Halloween, right?
Yeah. That's definitely the goal, is to have that out for Halloween.
So when I first saw the trailer you guys dropped for this, right, with the artwork, with the emergency broadcast interruption, it really shows the proof of concept, and like it immediately grabs your attention. You're like, oh, what is this? You know, where's this going to go? And then you start seeing like all these movie characters kind of hitting that small screen real Ghostbusters style. And I loved how you even went with the real 86 WBOO TV. Right, and then you can tell us, it's like Jeremy, I think you said you did some of the voiceover work for some of those pieces.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That was a lot of fun. Just digging. Once I knew I wanted to do kind of like real Ghostbusters versus movie monsters and stuff, it always has to be like deeper than surface level for me. Even if on the surface it's like, no, that's cool, like Ghostbusters versus movie monsters. In my head I'm like, okay, but what's the backstory? Like, why are they fighting movie monsters? Stuff that like nobody who is just, you know, checking out the drawings and being like, oh, that's cool. Like, no one's necessarily gonna think about it. But in my head I'm thinking about like, what's the backstory? How are these monsters escaping from their movies? Why are they getting out? How is it that this is all happening? And those were conversations me and Jeremy had, and the more that we kind of cooked up a little bit of a backstory for it, that kind of like led us down a path of like, oh, well, if that's the case, then we should do a thing like this and a thing like this, and we should like use some imagery like this. And and he was honestly the one that had a lot of those really cool ideas that I mean, Jeremy, you can talk about it better than me.
Yeah, for a lot of those trailers on the countdown, because we obviously wanted it to seem like you were watching this on the TV, and we wanted it to kind of be like the ghosts were breaking through your TV and kind of trying to interrupt the signal. So that was fun. And then a lot of the voiceover work and the stuff that was kind of like the cheesy 80s Halloween and like just TV trash kind of vibe was just from, because we used to have these VHS tapes where John had recorded the real Ghostbusters when it came on in the morning, and it had all of the commercials in it. So when I was younger, it wasn't like your general like Nickelodeon Cartoon Network. It was just VHS tape after VHS tape of Cartoon USA from like 7 in the morning till noon. And so I had all those like, you know, thanks to viewers like you kind of thing in there. And a lot of that voiceover work came from that.
On ABC, it was like, after these messages we'll be right back.
Yeah, I know that tune. When I hear that song, I see that song. If you know, you know.
Exactly. And it was fun. That's like some of the first voiceover work that I've done. I mean, me and John do funny voices to each other all the time, but to finally like be able to put it to something and be like, you know what this is, like, it's just pretty fun.
Yeah,
Alec and I are the same way. We're always doing impersonations and just being weird and absurd just because it's amazing, right? Like
it's a sibling thing. Like you guys, like siblings have like a shorthand that you instantly understand, and if you're in public and you do it to each other, everyone around you is just like, what the?
Yeah, like,
what is this?
Like, are you guys crazy? You're like, nah, we're just related.
we grew up like this. It's fine.
I swear, it's normal. So, you kind of start out with a good list of villains. You know, you kind of go through Samara, the Pale Man, Margaret. You had another excellent action bumper. One of my personal favorites on there, just because I really loved the way it turned out, and just the look is Winston versus Pennywise. Like, to me, like, that story is so interesting. the way, like the potential that has, right? Just with Winston's character in general, like, oh yeah, he'd be the right type to take on one of those guys, because he would just be willing to confront his fear, when I think the other Ghostbusters might have a little bit more apprehension around it, right? I kind of compare him to I compare Pennywise to, say, like the Boogeyman as far as villain style goes, because he's going to live on that fear. So I imagine like somebody like Egon isn't going to be able to think right, and I imagine Winston's going to be one of those guys that was like, I grew up around this, being afraid. I got over it all, right?
Yeah,
he's not the right guy for that.
He's got the military background, and it's I totally imagine him being the kind of guy who, in that situation, if he sees that there's only one way to get the job done, he's going to be the one who's like, all right, well, let's do it. And just like, march up to Pennywise and blast the deadlights out of the back of his head.
Absolutely. And then you did a great job of going in depth with some of the characters, right? You didn't just go for the standard core group of real Ghostbusters. I mean, you have Robo-Buster in there. You also have Alice in there. And for those who may not know that deep cut right off the top of their head, Alice helped the real Ghostbusters defeat Cthulhu, and I forget the episode title, but she's in there.
He was the Collect Call of Cthulhu.
Okay, yeah. So that's pretty awesome. You're able to add all those in there. You're not just going from scratch surface level here. You got the integrity, you've got the love for it, and so you're showing that through all the artwork, which is pretty awesome. So let me ask.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun for sure.
So Alec, which of these has struck a chord with you the most so far?
I would say the most recent that I have seen, the Pete Venkman and Pazuzu from Exorcist, was quite excellent. I wasn't expecting to see that one. It's like I don't know what to expect from these next, because they're pretty diverse. And like when I just saw Samara, I was like, oh, that's perfect. That makes sense, especially for the concept that you're describing. I can't imagine when one of you came up with that idea, you were like, oh yeah, that's totally it. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So that one I really like too, because I think The Ring is, in general, just a really underrated movie. So.
Yeah, man. I think I knew right away. Like that was one of the. Once I was like, okay, what could I have them face? We could do this. Okay, we could just do Ghost from the cartoon. Oh yeah, but people have seen all that. And then I landed on movie stuff, and that was once I was like, okay, well, if I did movies, who could I use? That was honestly probably the first one to pop into my head was Samara, because that was, I would say, the last movie to genuinely like terrify me, and it was because like it's not like I watched it yesterday, but like, I watched it yesterday for the first time and I peed my pants. No,
oh my God.
It was it was like shortly, it was after it came out and hit VHS. I had literally days before convinced my parents to let me move one of our TVs into my bedroom and just have it be like my TV. And so literally, like, you could be laying in my bed and the TV's right there at the foot of the bed. So that had happened like a couple days before. They rented it on VHS, and we all like sat there in the dark in the living room and watched The Ring. And it was genuinely terrifying. I think it was also like, it was right at the cusp of that wave of like Japanese style horror with like the really like glitchy, twitchy, creepy ghosts that would like, crawl all over the screen and everything. Like it was one of the first films to be like that in America. And so that just hit me really hard and it stuck with me. And it was like, I'm always watching horror movies, but none of them have scared me the way that I felt scared watching that movie. And so that was one of the first ones. As soon as I was like, Ghostbusters fighting movie monsters and movie ghosts, okay, gotta have that one. And then there were a lot of others, like there's some other ones that I remember like them scaring me from childhood that I'm excited to to get to, and then a lot of it too is just wanting to have them face off against just classic characters. It's interesting when I start getting into like, okay, how am I going to draw this character getting busted, this ghost or this monster, because you're so used to watching them in their own movies where Ghostbusters don't exist, and the whole like plot and the tension of the movie is about how are these normal humans going to figure out how to stop this thing, whatever it is. So like a movie like Child's Play, you genuinely feel like, oh my God, Chucky's going to kill everybody. But in Ghostbusters, you're like, you just shoot Chucky with a proton stream and trap the ghost. Like, it's not even a thing. Or, like, it's some stuff, like, I can imagine Samara putting up a good fight. And some of these other ghosts and creatures that are genuinely, like, physically a threat. But then some of them, you're just like, oh, that wouldn't even be a big deal. And it's fun to show that, to just like take the wind out of everything, where like in the movie you're like, oh my God, this is terrifying. And then like if the movie was part of the Ghostbusters universe, it would be over in like 3 seconds. And so that's a lot of fun to try and draw some of that stuff.
Yeah, those routine spook busts and seeing like the variations of the villains, right? Because I think that works very well for this concept, and that's one of my favorite parts about it, is you got so much variety in there, from little ghosts to major ghosts and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that Pazuzu statue drawing, like, I just love how that miniature statue is like just breaking in half there as you kind of see that ghost coming out, which really works for it, right? Because I guess you don't necessarily have like a huge exact image of Pazuzu, right? And so just to be able to have that creative liberty to kind of show it how you want to, I think that works really well, because that's something completely unique that ties back to the movie, but it's all its own there too, right? So I really appreciated that.
Yeah. I mean, you get like the little flashes of his face here and there, but it's never like, here's Pazuzu walking through the door. Like, you never see him.
Right.
And so it felt like the perfect thing to just kind of have his face flash there in like the beam of the trap.
I remember watching The Exorcist as a kid, and I was maybe 10 or 11. I was always at this friend's house, Nathan, who listens to the podcast. We've had him on even, but he was always showing me shit that I probably shouldn't have seen that young, but it's shaped who I am now. But I literally remember watching The Exorcist one time in the afternoon, and then I was literally scared to go, like, pee in the bathroom after I had seen Pazuzu's face, like, flashing across the screen and shit. I was just like, man, that thing is around here somewhere. I know it.
Yeah, man. And also, like, that was a fun one, too, because I knew I wanted to do that one, but I didn't know who I wanted to face off against him. And on one level, I was just like, oh, Peter makes sense because, I think it's happened in the comic book too, but also in he's gotten possessed in the Mrs. Rogers' Neighborhood episode where he gets possessed by what and tries to, break open the containment unit and everything. But he just seems like the kind of guy that like possessed Peter, or something trying to possess Peter would be really entertaining.
Yeah.
And also, there's that little bit of trivia where at the beginning of Ghostbusters, Peter's office door says, Venkman burn in hell. But I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that it was supposed to be a direct reference to a much more vulgar line from The Exorcist about Father Karras's mother doing some very terrible things in hell.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
I just showed Justin Scary Movie 2 for the first time the other day. That obviously opens up with a huge Exorcist reference with James Woods and all that nonsense, and Andy Richter. That's always funny to see.
Yeah, the comedy elements of that, I think, is, that's the beautiful thing about Ghostbusters, is you can have like this scary tension and then immediately like gut bursting laughter. It's just amazing, right? You relieve that tension, you can build that tension, you can add that fear, and then all of a sudden you're like, sigh of relief, and kind of laugh it out. And I think that's the beauty of this.
And that's the brilliance of Ghostbusters in general. Like, it's not a comedy the way you would traditionally think about a comedy, in the sense that like there's punchlines and gags and jokes and jokes and jokes. It's not even necessarily funny scenarios. It's just the fact that something that I can't remember who it was that I heard talking about Ghostbusters and on like a film podcast or film YouTube channel or something, but they said Ghostbusters is basically, it feels more like a disaster movie in the sense that, like, if you take out the Ghostbusters, the way that everybody is reacting to Gozer invading and all the ghosts and everything that's going on, and the way you see like the mayor trying to figure out what to do and the police reacting and everybody else, it feels just like a straightforward disaster movie, only instead of like a hurricane or earthquake or whatever, the disaster is ghosts. And in that way, it's got, you know, the horror aspect and everything. And it's got that kind of Lovecraftian, like, ancient elder gods will bring forth beings from beyond this dimension and all that kind of stuff. And then you insert these four guys, and the humor doesn't come from them walking around cracking jokes that are very like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, can you tell I'm being funny? It's from them walking around acting like, all right, well, I gotta be home by 7, so let's wrap this one up quick. Like, just treating it like it's not even a big deal. And then, like, waiting until no one's looking to be like, I'm actually terrified right now. But then trying to keep that straight public face and just, like, not admit to each other that they're actually, like, you know, that their pee hose is full or whatever. Like,
yes.
It's all very, like, it's kind of like situational comedy, not a sitcom, but like it's this feeling of like it's funny because it's not what would normally happen, as opposed to funny because, hey, we're trying to be funny right now. And I love that about it. That's what always made it feel super inviting to like be invested in that world and to imagine myself as a Ghostbuster as a kid, because these were just average guys acting like average people who are professing to be like the experts on it, but really they're just like, I think we're doing this right. And everybody else is very seriously like, we knew you were the guys for the job. And they're like, yeah. You know, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, you know, and I think, I'm not sure if you guys ever did it, but I kind of went through that moment, like when you kind of outgrow something for a little bit, you know, and I outgrew Ghostbusters for, you know, a handful of years. And then I think it was on TV or something like that, you know, even though I had a VHS copy and I was watching it, I heard some jokes and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God, this movie is hilarious. Yeah. And you're like, you know, the reasons I loved it as a kid, like as a kid, I remember like I'd watch the movie and like play Ghostbusters along with it. And so like, up until they catch Slimer, you know, I'd be playing along, and then some of the other scary parts I'd be tuned in, but I'd be kind of like watching and playing along, and then kind of zoning out for some of the funnier stuff as an adult, and some of the you know, some of the great Peter and Dana scenes and all that stuff. And you know, when I saw that again as, you know, probably an 11 or 12-year-old, like started getting the adult humor in there, it was like a complete game changer. I was like, yeah, I don't care.
You start to kind of, it's almost like you're falling in love with it on a whole different level all over again. Because you're totally right. Like as a kid, it's 100%. You're just like, you're still in that mode of like, oh, the closet is scary at night. I'm afraid of what's under my bed. I'm scared of the dark. But also, it's really cool that here are these people who have like these really cool like laser backpacks, and they are going around saying you don't have to be afraid because we're gonna bust the ghost, and like you want to. Like, not only does that make you perk up because you're like, I don't have to be afraid, but also it looks really cool and they seem really cool and funny, and you want to be a part of that. You want to go on that adventure with them. But then you're totally right. Like, once you start hitting a certain age and you start noticing things and picking up on things, you're just like, I didn't get that when I was young. Like, no joke, when I was a kid, and they would get to the line where Peter's at Dana's apartment, but she's possessed at this point, and she's trying to pin him down, and she's like, I want you inside me. I was like, oh no, she's gonna eat him.
Yeah, you think he's gonna eat her, or she's gonna eat him or like possess him or something, and you're like, nope, that's not what that meant.
Yeah, and just stuff like that where like as a kid, even unintentionally, it makes the movie scarier because you're just like, something's wrong with Dana. She's gonna eat him. She's possessed. And it's like, yeah, sure, kid, go with that. That works.
Yeah.
But then, like, as an adult, you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I think that's what, that's why it always stays with me so long, and I'm sure that's the same way for other people. And like, it became cool to like it again, and I was just at that point, once I was that age, is like, I don't care what anyone says, I like this. And then ever since then, it's been like just a lifetime fandom. Like, there's maybe out of 36 years, I'd say there's maybe 5 years tops where I was like, it wasn't really wasn't in tune with the Ghostbusters world, but came back. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about your guys' artistic influences, right? So, John, you've uniquely got your own style that you've kind of developed here over the last couple of years, right? Probably even longer than that. Mm-hmm. And it's got a heavy anime influence, but you've also clearly been inspired by the real Ghostbusters, especially for this series, right? So all those things there, like you capture the imagination, the feeling, the personality of those characters while making it uniquely your own without just trying to take the classic characters and draw it and mix it with these villains, like, right? So it's a comprehensive, unique take on your vision. So how did you get there, and what inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the real Ghostbusters for sure, for one thing. I think just Ghostbusters in general, but especially the cartoon, because it was so prevalent. Like, it's the version of Ghostbusters we've gotten the most of out of anything, with just like, hundreds of episodes, a new one every Saturday morning, and then like marathons. Like, you up from like, what was it, 86 to like 92 when it ended, it was always there. And so that was a huge influence on me, and just constantly keeping my mind in that place of like, what adventure are they going to go on next? And wanting to like imagine what that would be like, and dream that up and imagine myself being part of it was that was like part of my initial spark of wanting to write and draw, because I'd watch Ghostbusters, I'd play Ghostbusters with the toys, and then I'd sit down and want to write and draw my own Ghostbusters adventures. Probably, I didn't ever really have a period where I wasn't into Ghostbusters, but I think just by virtue of, Extreme Ghostbusters lasted for like a season in 97. But other than that, we really went through a good drought up until probably around the mid 2000s, I guess, when we started having like the 88 miles per hour comics, and the game, and the IDW comics started coming out. And it was around 2000 that, I think I was like 12 years old. I was in middle school, and all the kids start, talking about like, oh, I'm not into cartoons and trick-or-treating and toys anymore. That's kid stuff. I like dating and cars and football and, just all the like, this is what, cool kids are into, and that kind of stuff. And I remember just kind of having this internal crisis of like, oh no, am I supposed to like grow up now? Do I have to find new things to like? Am I not allowed to be into cartoons and all that kind of stuff anymore? And I remember that summer, my mom let me stay up till midnight for the first time. And I was really excited because I was like, this is an adult thing. I'm a grown-up now.
Yes.
And I remember flipping through channels and just being really disappointed because there was nothing on that I wanted to watch until I got to Cartoon Network. And there was this show that was literally just like the animation was like really detailed and clean, and it was these two guys in super detailed military uniforms having like a complex conversation about wartime tactical strategies and politics and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, that sucked me in before I even knew what was going on, because I was like, this is a cartoon. Why are they talking about grown-up stuff? And then right after that scene ended, it cut to like giant robots punching the crap out of each other. And in that moment, before I even knew what I was watching, I was like, I'm never going to stop watching cartoons. I don't have to. This cartoon is for more than kids. And that show turned out to be Gundam Wing. And so since that moment in time, I have been a huge fan of Gundam, anime in general, but like Gundam has always stuck with me. I think like if I could describe it, like as much as people know I love Ghostbusters, I might not be as outward about it, but like Ghostbusters and Gundam are two halves of my heart in the sense of like things that inspired me to want to create. Like Ghostbusters started the journey, and Gundam was the thing that made sure that I would never stop drawing or writing or creating or anything like that. But in general, like I love all kinds of anime. You know, we grew up watching the Miyazaki stuff like My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away, Castle in the Sky, and all that kind of stuff. Mecha anime and cyberpunk anime are huge for me in the sense that those really inform the kind of stuff I like to draw, especially with some of the like more technical aspects of like machinery and you know, gear work and gauges and technology and stuff and that kind of stuff. You can see influences like when I draw proton packs and all the traps and gear for Ghostbusters and the vehicles and everything. So stuff like Gundam, Mobile Police, Pat Labor, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell, Outlaw Star, Cowboy Bebop, just all that kind of stuff is right up my alley for sure. And it's, you know, that love for cartoons is still going strong. Like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, you know, some of the newer Ninja Turtle stuff. All that kind of stuff is just constantly influencing me, but definitely real Ghostbusters and like mecha cyberpunk anime are probably the two biggest influences on me.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Outlaw Star in there. I remember watching, I used to watch a lot of Toonami in the late 90s and when it was in the afternoon block. So I remember seeing all those like different shows, because some of them they wouldn't show for very long. They'd only show maybe one season of, and then if it didn't do too well, maybe they'd switch it out with something else. So I do remember loving Outlaw Star. I remember Yu Yu Hakusho was really good. Tenchi Muyo was on there, and I remember Gundam Wing was the one they had for the longest time on there. And then they started, like, I don't know how many Gundam shows, you know, they ended up having on there. There's so many, but I do remember watching, like, when they switched to the late night block, they showed Big O, and I was like, oh, this is new. This feels like Batman in a fucking Gundam.
It was,
this rules.
I mean, it feels like stylistically, it feels like Batman with robots.
Yeah.
And that's another one. I mean, that one didn't have as much of an impact on me stylistically, but just it's such a great show. Like, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
So, Jeremy, what's influenced your art? I know you're not just kind of like you guys remind me a lot of my brother and myself because, you know, we're both musicians, we're both artists. You know, like anything creative is like the driving force to just feel fulfilled in life, right? You have to have some sort of like outlet for that, and to me that's the easiest way to do it. So what's kind of your influence on your music and obviously on your art and your collaboration process?
At first, like in the very early beginnings of me becoming the person who I am today, a lot of it was like seeing John do something and then being like, I can do that. And I just sit down and watch him, like, silently, and then go off and do it on my own. And that kind of later evolved into knowing, like, the basics and then going in and figuring out how to do it on my own. I think we used to make movies together and stuff like that, but later on, especially after he left the house, I was like, because I'm not really a story, like, creative writing kind of person. The way our collaboration works most of the time is because John can take an idea and run, like, around the world in 80 days with it, like, 7 times. and have like so much content down to like, and then one of his fingers is actually shorter than the other, and this plays into the story in a very significant way. And I'm like, okay, so we have this great big idea. We know like what the heart of it is, like what we want people to feel when they're watching it. Let's figure out what the ideal picture of the perfect version of this is, and then figure out what we can do to get as close as possible. So it's like, we might want to do like actual animation, which was one of the things that we figured we might have wanted to do when we first started the pre-production, pre-planning phase of this whole project. But as we realized how time-consuming that would be, I was like, we can still make it move, it just won't be like real animation. We're going to have to like really cut the corners, and I kind of, I call it like, I don't know, impressionistic art, where like you kind of suspend the person's disbelief just enough to make their brains go in the direction and fill in the gaps of like, oh, this is like alive, like it's moving, I can tell, even though like it might not be. But a lot of my influences, they just come from everywhere. Like if there's a really good TV show, I'll just like take note of the things they did right and keep it in my brain. And then if we are doing something that involves a need for that, I'll just do it. I definitely fall in line with the more creepy and gritty storytelling. Like all of the art that I do is like pen and ink, and it's all like monsters and ghouls and ghosts and skeletons and stuff like that. So I definitely lean towards the darker side. And then with my music, I like it heavier, but I also listen to like Earth, Wind and Fire and Casey and the Sunshine Band, and some like more modern pop artists. And I think my tastes go from like, I don't know, like Kesha to Slipknot to Coltrane to Darius Rucker and Johnny Cash, like really just running the whole gamut and trying to absorb all the things that they did that were really good, and then like Frankenstein together something that fits me, but is like, I learned something from you and I'm just going to put it all together and make something great.
No, so. I definitely relate to that, because I also, I listen to everything from like the 50s stuff. I really like Johnny Cash and Buddy Holly and like Bobby Darin and some of that kind of stuff. And then obviously like 60s psychedelic and 60s garage music. And then everything, you know, Prince, David Bowie. And then you get, you know, all the way to Nine Inch Nails and all the modern stuff that's coming out. Like even, I'm not afraid to say it, I can dig some Post Malone every now and then, you know?
Dude, same. Yeah.
Like, I feel weird about liking it, but then I'm like, well, you know what? Fuck it. It is what it is. It's pretty good. Exactly. I give the guy credit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to me, like when you're describing that, it stands out to a moment like, so Alec and I both went to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and that's out in the Phoenix area, right? That's out in Tempe and Gilbert. And so when we're going to school there, right, they're like, okay, so a lot of you guys and gals and any, you know, all the students like aren't necessarily just into, you know, like country music. It's not something that most of you are going to like, right? There's a few people that come through that, but they had like that profound moment where you go from being kind of immature to like having that mature like light bulb click, and they're like, you may not like this style of music, but it's going to make your job a lot more enjoyable if you find to always seek out something you like about it no matter what. So you may hate the song, but think about the kick drum, think about the snare. How does this sound together? How does the mix sound? Like, think about the other elements that aren't what you don't like about the music, but think about the production value that you can use later. And I think that's a great way to look at creative projects, right? You said you like to take note of things that work well. I mean, it's at the same time, you're always looking at things that didn't work well, right? So, okay, that's a great idea of what not to do, because I didn't like the way that was executed. Or if I was going to execute on this, you know, particular plan, what would I do? And I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, it's definitely also like one of those things where when you take note sometimes of something that did go wrong, it's kind of like The Room, where the movie was so bad, but then people did like parodies of it, and they specifically took those wrong things and just pumped them up to like 100.
Yeah.
And it's just good stuff. I definitely like breaking down people's processes. It's really cool to see how other people think when you all have the same tools laid out in front of you, and then you can be like, oh, I never thought to approach it that way, you know?
Tommy Wiseau would be a good villain for Ghostbusters Afterlife. It's a shame that wasn't.
Oh my God,
yeah.
yes.
Hello, Ghostbusters. Oh, hi, I'm Peter.
You're tearing me apart, Langman.
I did not slime her. I did not.
Oh yeah, we're big fans of that. I think I showed Justin to that like a year ago, maybe, because he had never seen it, and I was like, oh, I don't know what you're missing here.
So what's do you guys have anything else in the work after this, or what's next? I know there's got to be something in the works, right? Is it secret?
Not secret as much as just like, you know, we have kind of a running conversation between us where we're constantly just having random ideas and being like, oh man, one day we should do this, or next we should try this. And it's never, it's not always necessarily a fleshed out idea. Sometimes it really is just like he was saying, like we'll be watching a movie or a TV show and be like, oh man, we should do something where we use that technique or tell that kind of story, or, you know, put a song together that functions like this or sounds like this. And, you know, it's kind of just a process of like waiting for the time, you know, like for our individual free times to line up, but then also to line up with like, you know, the time, the idea, the inspiration, and just seeing what comes out of it. And you know, this just happened to be one of those times as far as Ectober. I think, you know, we've talked about doing some other Ghostbusters related stuff in the future just for fun. I personally have a lot of like comic book ideas with like original characters and stuff that I think it'd be really fun for us to do something with. Whether that's musically or something like Ectober, where it's art mixed with a little bit of that half animated type thing. You know, Jeremy's always playing instruments and coming up with new sounds and stuff. And we've talked about doing almost like concept album type stuff. And, you know, just seeing what feels good when we talk about it, like waiting for someone to say something and be like, oh yeah, we should do that, you know?
That's excellent to hear. You know, like Alec and I are kind of the same way. We're always working on like what's next. So with the podcast, that was something we talked about for probably a year and a half before we really finally got around to it. You know, it was just one of those things. We're talking on the phone. We're always going in depth about the things we love. And it's like, oh, okay. When we finally made it happen, we're like, why didn't we do this before? Like, we've talked about it so long. Like, what have we been doing?
I mean, we're both audio engineers, so it was ridiculous that we hadn't done it yet.
Yeah. We literally, everything we have need, you know, you need, and it's sitting around getting dusty, and you're like, we should really use this stuff.
I think the only reason that took so long is because, you know, we're obviously, before all other fandoms, we're pretty much ghost heads. So it was like, how can we do something that isn't just another Ghostbusters podcast? Because we're obviously huge fans of the existing ones. We didn't want to just be another lost voice because, you know, we think that it's pretty much covered well by the other two that we really like. I mean, I guess there's maybe 3 or 4.
We'll name drop. I mean, you know, like I remember talking to Troy Benjamin from the Interdimensional Cross Rip on AOL Instant Messenger when I was like probably like early junior high, maybe right around then, talking to him about Extreme Ghostbusters and the Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent like script that was circulating around at the time. So, you know, it's like just finding the fandom way back then and like seeing where it is now, and then you're like, oh, that's Troy. Like Troy went on to do all that. Like, you know, Troy just dropped his new book, the Wakanda Files. So, that's awesome to see.
Which looks insane, by the way. Like the whole idea of having the beads and being able to like flash them over the page and see like the handwritten notes from Shuri and everything. Just like, that's a genius idea.
Yeah,
and also like obviously he's written the Ecto manual and everything.
Yes, I saw that with the hidden lighting on there. I think it's like blacklight reactive or whatever, but it's just like, oh my god, I have to get that now. I've been planning on getting it anyway, but I was like, Troy, you didn't tease any of this stuff with us when you're talking about this book. Like, come on, man. Like, hype this thing up. You'll sell more copies of it.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
So speaking of sales, are you guys going to have any prints or anything like that nature available of these? Because there's some of these that I think would look pretty amazing on the walls around this place.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some ideas. There's a cool idea I have in mind to kind of collect all of the artwork after the fact once everything's over, and kind of be able to package it all together and put that out there for people to get their hands on. So we'll probably announce that not too long after Halloween, and then definitely the goal would be to have that available for people to grab, prior to Christmas. So, that'd be like a cool gift for yourself or for, the Ghostbusters fan in your life. But that would be cool. And then, I have a feeling like that last image, the Halloween one, is going to be a big hit. So that might be one that we might do an individual print of that. And then Jeremy actually has made the Ectober theme song available for download.
Yep.
You want to let the people know where they can get their hands on that, my friend?
Yeah, man. You can go to ectober.bandcamp.com. Right now, it's pay what you want. You can download it for free, or you could donate a little money to us so we can keep hashing out these sick, nasty projects for you guys. I think right now, Bandcamp sets a limit of 200 free downloads, and after that, you have to pay a minimum of $1. So get it for free while you can. Show it to as many people as you can. I mean, I put a lot of work into it. John's putting a lot of work into it now. We just want you guys to enjoy it. It's good.
We're yeah, I definitely went and downloaded that. I gave you $1 for it. It's definitely going to be in heavy rotation with all of the Ghostbusters playlists I have now. It's up there.
Oh, bless. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I definitely see the potential for this to be its own, even if it's just a mini-series comic book or a TV show or something of that nature. There's just so much potential in this concept. And to have that music in there and to have the subtle animation going on, right? It's a lot of lighting stuff. So, when you were describing that earlier, to me, it's imagine if you're just going to do some toy photography and you've got something amazing to work with, but you're limited on maybe your lighting and stuff. So you could do something similar like that, with just kind of doing some of the basic things there. And it just turns out well. It really gives you the feel of what you're going for, right? You kind of got that proton stream blast. When you're looking at these images, you really feel that, okay, yeah, they're really catching this ghost, or the light from the trap and the light on people's face. You see that kind of, that glowing vibe that you were able to create in there. And it just works really well. And then obviously the music on it just kind of puts you in the mood. You're like, all right, when's the episode start?
Yeah.
And then you're like, when's the next one come on?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the goal. I think for me, and I'm sure for Jeremy too, Ghostbusters, like I was saying, Ghostbusters and Halloween has always felt very closely tied together, and those 3 episodes that they did that were the Halloween specials for the real Ghostbusters are some of my favorite, any version of Ghostbusters media that we've gotten. Those are some of my favorite things. And so whenever we get into late September, October, definitely around Halloween, I just have that feeling of man, I wish there was some sort of Ghostbusters something happening around Halloween to kind of bring back that feeling. And it really just, me doing this challenge and bringing Jeremy in on it and us putting it together and everything is just, it's trying to recapture that vibe of hey, this is the spookiest time of the year, but Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing. And so it's just been really fun to try and recapture that vibe. And especially with everything going on, obviously Halloween is always alive in everybody, but people aren't trick-or-treating, they're not having Halloween parties, or at least the idea is not to do that kind of stuff because obvious reasons. But it doesn't mean that we can't necessarily still celebrate Halloween, and this just felt like a cool thing to do, at least for the Ghostbusters fans that are looking for a way to kind of celebrate Halloween. It's kind of my own, it was our way of doing like a little love letter to that intersection of Ghostbusters and Halloween, and saying like, enjoy this.
Yeah, I think like for us, like, I mean, we're both really big fans of Ghostbusters, but it's not only just us, like it's our whole family, and it's kind of like an Olive Garden for us. It's like Ghostbusters, when you're here, your family. Like you kind of want to. It's like a love letter to like when you're a kid, and October 1st hits, and all of a sudden it's like we're gonna watch the whole season, like the whole series of Real Ghostbusters every morning before school, and then on October 31st we're gonna marathon the movies. It's like it's just the whole feeling. It's not just like the franchise. It's like a love letter back to the time when like Halloween was a little more tangible, at least for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely. I think there's a magic that hits, especially like in October, and especially as you get closer and closer to Halloween when you're a kid, where you are more hyper aware of just like the changing of the season, and like seeing Halloween decorations go up, and all of like the Halloween TV show specials and cartoons and everything, and whatever movies are coming out, and it kind of like puts you in that mindset when you're a kid where you can, maybe it's not necessarily actually paranormal, but you feel like the sense of wonder about the season is more tangible, and it's like the closest that you get to feeling like, oh, there's like some spooky things that I can't see that are all around me, and in a way that's like the closest you feel, like the closest you can get to feeling like you live in sort of a Ghostbusters world. And as a kid, for us, that was like, it felt like an invitation to be like, hey, if this is as close as you can get, where's my Kinder Proton pack? I'm in Ghostbusters mode now. And so, like, yeah, it's just about tapping into that feeling again, for sure.
Oh, I definitely think it's all captured in there. And, and I almost wonder, like, Halloween doesn't quite seem like it quite did in the 80s and early 90s to me, like nowadays. And I think we're really lucky to have gone through that special time, because it's still very popular, but I just don't think it's, I think it hit peak in the 80s and early 90s, and so there's like some really magical stuff there, right? I mean, even when I think of the movie E.T., like E.T. is an amazing movie, but I just have so much fun just like thinking of the Halloween scenes in that, and like that whole like dusk falling, and like that whole vibe of like, okay, it's starting to get dark, we get to go trick-or-treating soon, like this is it, like this is what we've been living for, right? And like that whole magic experience there like is just captured on film for me. Like you can watch that and experience that and be like, oh yeah, that kind of captures that emotion perfectly.
Right.
I think there's even more than Ghostbusters. I think the 90s, because I was born in 87, so I'm a little bit younger than you, but there was just, you had stuff like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books that everybody like is terrified of, and everyone knows that one page that you're always afraid to flip to because you know what you're going to see, and it's just there was a greater sense of like, oh man, I can't remember the YouTube video. I literally, if you could watch me while I'm drawing, it's just me with my face pointed at my tablet, and then in the background is just YouTube videos that are like an analysis on cosmic horror, and just like I'm constantly soaking in like all that kind of stuff. And I was watching one where someone was talking about like why it feels like horror and Halloween and that kind of stuff isn't as big of a deal for kids these days. And I can't remember the conclusion they came to in the sense of like why it kind of died out, but they did point out like there was this feeling of like in the 90s, and before that too, it was like writers like R.L. Stine and the people who did the Goosebumps show and all the other stuff we just mentioned had this desire to show kids like, yes, like there are scary things in the world. There are things out there that are terrifying, things that might try to stop, might try to hurt you or whatever, but you're going to be okay. Like these stories are about kids facing terrifying things and realizing that they have it within them to change it or to stop it or to face it or whatever the case is and come out the other side and be okay. And what it boiled down to was like, it was never about like, hey, here's a story where we're literally just killing kids left and right. Like, it wasn't about leaving these kids scarred. It was about showing them like, you are capable of not being afraid. It's kind of the same lesson as Ghostbusters, like being able to stare into the darkness and say, I ain't afraid. And that just, for whatever reason, just kind of slowly died out. And so, like, yeah, I guess like the Goosebumps books are still kind of going to one degree or another. And there's some things that pop up here and there, but there's not as big of a push for that brand of horror and that kind of horror that invites kids to like tiptoe up to the edge of creepiness, but then know like, hey, I'm still okay. I made it. And I mean, if I could tell any kind of story for the rest of my career as a creative person, like that is 100% the kind of storytelling that I would want to do. Like that horror and that sense of like creepy adventure, sort of like almost like a Stranger Things vibe where you're like, you're probably too young to be dealing with the things you're dealing with, but yet here you are, you're in it, and you know that you can get through it. And just, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think children's horror, I guess that's what you would call it, kind of, in the 90s was at its peak, for sure. Like, even the Scooby-Doo movies that they did in the late 90s, like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and stuff, like, those were animated in, apparently, Japan, which I didn't know until recently. But those are really well done. And I know they kept those going, and I haven't seen any like they've done in the last 15 years, I don't think, really. But there was also, Courage the Cowardly Dog, I remember being very spooky. Very creepy at times, where it's almost hard to watch. But then there's enough comedy in there that it really works and brings it together. And like you were talking about Goosebumps, there was also, in the 90s, they had Are You Afraid of the Dark? I think there was just a lot more of this stuff that was actually happening, that was actually taking it to, like you said, a spooky level where it was actually creepy, it was actually scary. Yeah. And nowadays it seems like there's lots of children's horror content, but it's mostly, I don't know if I'd call it children's horror. It's just like comedy shows with spooky elements. Rather,
like it feels a lot less like this is horror, it's just aimed at kids. It feels more like this is for kids, but it has things that you would find in a horror show or movie, or
kind
whatever.
of like a horror
like,
episode
honestly,
of a regular cartoon show.
Yeah, like honestly, It Chapter 1, like the first part of the most recent It movies, it was bloodier than, Goosebumps or whatever, but a lot of that had a similar vibe to like just an amped up Goosebumps episode, and I loved it. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head, though. Like the just the broadness that there was available in the 90s, and then now it's, you're not wanting to scare kids as much. And I think some of those same types of things have moved on to different stuff, right? Like the Hunger Games and things like that, and Harry Potter, were, a generation has grown up to not, like we grew up to be not afraid of things just because like all the media and pop culture and everything we consumed was like, hey, we're going to present you with these scary scenarios and we're going to show you how these kids overcome them. And then it's a little more dystopian with some of the stuff these other kids have had. Like, Harry Potter has very spooky vibes, but it's also along the lines of Hunger Games, where you're kind of learning to deal with
the adults or the bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of learning how to rebel and overcome other obstacles in life. But I think you need that balance of both of those. So, and I think that's kind of that magic piece that is ripe for the taking. So if you guys have a take on it, now's your time. It's ready for you. The world's ready.
I mean, I'm down to do that. How about you, Jeremy?
Oh, 100%, dude.
Well, I think we pretty much wrapped up it all. You guys were amazing. I really appreciate your time coming through and telling us about everything. So if you guys just want to give a shout out where everyone can find you on social media, if they're not already following you or checking you out.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me at Yurcaba, Yarkooba on Instagram. That's pretty much the only social media I'm active on. I post my music, my art, everything else, stuff that I do with John. Also, again, you can get the Ectober theme song at ectober.bandcamp.com. And other than that, yeah, I'll probably be on John's page a little bit too. You want to take over, John?
Yeah, for the Ectober goods and everything else that I do, you can find that on both Instagram and Twitter, and that will be at John Yurcaba 4, JOHNYURCABA, the number 4. Same handle for both Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm not on there as much. I don't post a whole lot of art on there. But I'm on there as well. Feel free to come add me, find me. I also have an art page on Facebook, The Art of John Yurcaba. And other than that, I will probably see and interact with some of you guys on like the Yes Have Some group therapy page. But yeah, I'm everywhere.
Excellent. Well, thanks, gentlemen. Be sure to check these guys out on social media, and hopefully we'll be able to give an update once you guys are ready to release this Ectober project here in early November. So circle back. Any information you have on that, we'll gladly share with our group out here. So appreciate your time. Have a great night, gentlemen.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
These are my dinner guests, the Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. These are my dinner guests, Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. These are my dinner guests, the Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. These are my dinner guests, Frog Brothers.
Shut this off. Shut these all off.